Hey there, YouTubers. It's me again. This time I have a toy which you might not be able to see that well. Hey, let me turn on a light here. That may help a little bit. It's closest packed plastic beads inside a tetrahedron, and it's actually taped shut with a lid on it because I think if I open this lid and dump it out, each ball is free. It's in solid form now, but I could kind of turn it into a liquid. Let's talk about Gibbs phase rule one of these times and how, when it gets cold suddenly, you get different phenomena than if it gets cold gradually. The way gases react or get trapped, the way things materialize depending on the rate of change is something we should talk about. But here I'm talking about more like how we do memes in the back office. Like you might wonder, where do those Facebook memes come from? Well, obviously from everywhere, all over the place. Anyone can sit down and make some memes with some minor skills. And what I'm doing in this one is I'm just taking a random YouTube on the left, which would be kind of how you would learn the volumes of polyhedron, what we call the mugshot method, where we just say the edge is what's important on each one of these. And of course, the cube gets to be e to the third power, because that's how we define third power and why we can say cubing as a synonym, right, in English. Now, I would argue if that defines English, then synergetics is not English. Synergetics is what we see on the right side here, and the advantage of this version is not that it takes us away from what I call earthling math on the left, but that it offers an alternative. And all you really do need is an alternative, not a replacement, in order to get the benefits of what I call compare and contrast. So that's the name of this picture, compare and contrast. But this is on Flickr. This is not on Facebook. So if I jump to Facebook, you'll see there it's going out to the public. And I'm saying 2019 versus 2020 because I'm somehow implying that we're heading towards more use of what I'd call the Quaker school curriculum that I'm working on. Here we are at the live CodePen.io place where I developed this chart. You can see that it just appears as a regular web page. Now, did I manage to get the Super RT in my version? Yeah, there it is down there. The Super RT, you may not want to call it that, but that's a rhombic tricontahedron where you take the icosahedron and pentagonal dodecahedron and crisscross them and get a rhombic tricontahedron. Now, that icosahedron in turn you can derive from the cube octahedron by what we call the jitterbug transformation. So there's this jargon that creeps in 2020 more and more at the high school level. Like we're not trying to educate the college professors anymore, and we can do this in American literature. So high school English, high school American English. If you want to really become literate and become like an English major or a language major, that's a kind of jargon you might want to pick up because when you read in the STEM subjects, right, the sciences and the engineerings and stuff, you want to know about lattices and about sphere packing and so forth. Speaking of which, speaking of STEM, this is a primes generator. It's written using the keyword yield in Python, which means until we actually ask for the next value, it's not going to compute it. So we can have kind of a just-in-time approach to prime numbers. And I'm showing you this because I'm saying Python is behind and in the future when you're looking at things like compare and contrast here. Although, to be honest, this is more about teaching another segment of the curriculum. What Gene Fowler, a poet, wrote Waking the Poet. We used to correspond a lot. He was a very prolific writer, and I appreciated that he worked with me for a while there. This guy was, he'd been in San Quentin actually, and he, as many people do, or some people do, kind of reinvented himself, recreated himself in prison, and discovered synergetics, I believe, there. You'd be surprised how many people discover synergetics when they have nothing to lose, basically. Let's just look at this book here and so forth. So he's not the only prison story there, but he was convinced that HTML, which was just emerging in his day, just beginning to, it was looking more like an XML. Well, we could go into the details, but he was thinking, this is just more punctuation. Instead of like sending this off to engineering and saying, oh, HTML, CSS, that's all like for engineers. No, that's like punctuation. That's like, we used to have and still have semicolons and colons, but now we have HTML tags too. So it's really up to the language and communications teachers to pick this up. And I'm also putting more math kind of in that side of the curriculum. Like in the humanities curriculum, you need the golden mean, you need the Pythagoreans, you need William Irwin Thompson at the college level. So going that direction, starting early, what do you want to read? If you're going to read Norman O. Brown at the college level, what are you going to read? That kind of question. You want kind of an integrated curriculum. And if you're kind of like a religious sect or a cult, like a branch of the Quakers, say, it's easier to do that, to design from top to bottom. Like if the kids are going to be growing up to learn this and that, then maybe we should expose them to that and this, such as like Jupyter notebooks. So like what I'm doing here is I'm importing the deck and showing how it's like a list, but I'm filling it with prime numbers, just 30 prime numbers, and then using this short little generator that I have. This has to keep track of what primes it's already had. It's not a super, efficient prime computer. It will fill up memory as time goes on because it's keeping all prior primes and test dividing up to a certain limit before it lets another prime pass the test. Like if all the primes up to the second root of you don't divide you, then you're admitted to the club as one more prime, and so on. So this iteratively adds to a list of primes so far, and then using those as criteria lets new primes into the club. It's a well-known algorithm, nothing I take credit for here, just implementing it in a Jupyter notebook and then using it to fill a deck with the next, say, 30 primes at some point. And then showing how with the deck you can rotate. Like I want to just rotate that whole list of 30 primes by 5, and you can see how it's like a big wheel, like Wheel of Fortune or one of those game shows where you've already got all your spokes labeled in some way, and then you rotate the whole thing. You might be imagining cryptography comes in here somewhere. Like this sounds like the basis for building some kind of Enigma code or something. And sure, you could employ the deck in many creative ways. I won't go into a whole long song and dance about decks now. I just wanted to show you where we use an actual machine executable language for doing a lot of our math. It's not about doing everything on a calculator. It's the calculator of tomorrow that we use in the School of Tomorrow. So the video I just made before this one was called School of Tomorrow Overview, right? And that's to help you understand what it is that I do in this particular channel. And I should make clear that when I teach a formal course, for example, in Python, which I do, I don't ramble among topics quite so widely, or I do maybe ramble, but I keep my topics even more confined to the topic at hand, i.e. Python. Or the thing about teaching Python, though, is you can't just focus on pure Python and give a really realistic picture of how it's actually used in the world, which is what I'm wanting to do for people. So I do indeed go over the boundary, because here, like in Jupyter Notebooks, I'm already using a technology that you could say is ancillary to Python itself. The Jupyter Notebook ecosystem, the whole Anaconda ecosystem, is what I tend to jump around in quite a bit. If you're not familiar with this distribution of Python, you might want to make it a next research topic. It's a very productive distribution that includes Python, but also a very capable code editor, and two actually. It's got VS Code, Visual Studio Code from Microsoft, the community version, free version. You can get R, you can get, it's not confined to Python, in other words. It's a, kind of a bridge, and I would introduce it in the high school, and I do that online in the School of Tomorrow. So come take a look at my up-to-date curriculum and see if you agree with me that there's room for alternatives, even when it comes to how we teach about polyhedra. Okay, let me know if you have questions or like, subscribe, and so forth. Tell your friends that you can learn math and Python together, not as two separate subjects, and at the same time tackle your American history or just world literature through the Bucky syllabus, which is what goes down here at this channel on almost every video, just because got to make up for how everyone else doesn't cover it. Maybe if a lot of people start doing the Bucky stuff, I can start doing other things, right? I could see that. All right, we'll talk to you soon.